Brothers of War.
The
What If Show. This is What If Show hosted by Darius Davis, where real issues meet real people, where culture meets college paths, from community leaders to athletes, activists to everyday voices. If it matters to people, it matters here.
Where the truth, you know, ain't the only truth that exists.
What if change started with a conversation?
Every street got a story, every block got a legend, every city got a what if, every rumor got a message. We take the myth, the whispers in the night, flip the script, shine a light, turn the shadows into sign. What if studio?
The What If Show.
All right, I would like to welcome Mrs. Julie Knight to the show. I'm your host, Darius Davis. So Julie, for those meeting you for the first time, who is Julie Knight?
Good evening, everyone. First of all, let me say thank you, Darius, for having me on the What If Show. It's an honor to be here with everybody tonight. And good evening to anybody out there in the audience. I guess the first thing I'd like to share is that Darius and I are from the same hometown, which is small town Abbeville, Alabama. So grew up there, did college in Alabama, started my career out in IT because that was the happening thing with Y2K. A lot of people might not know what that is, but So yeah, but then I decided that IT wasn't for me. Working with the computer all day that does not talk back to you was not my thing. And so after that, I kind of bounced around a little bit and landed in finance, went back to college, got an MBA with a concentration in finance. And for the last 15 years, I've been working in public service, primarily doing right now economic development for the county. And also since 2021, I've been growing my own business, and that's in real estate. So investing, and now I'm getting into developing real estate as well. I have a daughter, one daughter, 21 years old, also in college now at my alma mater. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Great stuff. I do want to ask you, how did you get involved with real estate?
Oh, I just kind of fell into it, really. You know, I had purchased a property that I lived in back in 2013 or 12 or so. And when I moved, I sold that property. Did pretty well with it because it was a foreclosure when I bought it. And the market had bounced back once I sold it. So I made a pretty good amount on that. But when the other opportunity came for me to move away, like to DC, I live in DC now. So in 2021, I got another job up here. So I was relocating from Alabama to DC. And instead of selling my house this time, I decided to keep it. I went and found me a property manager to manage it for me because I had no idea how to do that long distance, you know, from DC in Alabama. So she did that for me, and it worked out so well that I immediately fell in love with it. And I made it my mission to buy at least one property every year at that time. And I've managed to do that. So now in 2026, I built a portfolio of 5 single family homes. So that's kind of how it started for me though. Yeah.
Great. I do want to ask you, is there a defining moment that kind of pushed you into this space of, working with, selling homes and things of that nature?
I think it was just that, really, Darius. You know, like I work a 9 to 5. I still work a 9 to 5, and the fact that I was able to keep that property, you know, that's an asset that I own. Somebody else is paying the bill. You know, there's risk associated with it. Obviously, you're not in control if somebody else lives there. You try to do due diligence and pick good tenants, and things like that. But this property is appreciating. Somebody else is paying the bill, but it still belongs to me, And so, yeah, I think the fact that that was happening kind of in the background while I'm still managing my everyday life, managing my job, growing my career, it was very, very appealing to me. And then the fact that I was able to start building a team and able to do it, from so far away, and still have it work out very well. It just, all of those things kind of working together just got me hooked.
Awesome, awesome. Now, with your background, we're from a very small town. How has that kind of shaped your perspective on housing?
Oh, that's a good question. I think my experience right now, I look at bigger picture a lot more so now than I used to. And that's because so much goes into economic development, right? Like economic development is not just housing. That's a piece of it. And it's a very important piece, but it's also jobs, like, Abbeville's economy was built on a production factory, for so many years. And then you can see how once that production factory is not there anymore, how it affects the whole place in a major way, especially when you're talking about an employer that hundreds of people work there, and so, yeah, it's really like the bigger picture for me. So when I think about Abbeville now, I think about what does it need? It needs industry, it needs jobs, because that is like such an important driver of everything else that goes into the economy and the success of people who live there.
That is so true, so true. It's great you pointed that out. I do want to ask you about pretty much like what part of this housing journey are you kind of most proud of right now?
Hmm. I would say just the fact that I've endured, it's been a big learning curve. I didn't come from a family that's in real estate. I just kind of immersed myself in it, and once I started, I knew that I didn't know a lot. And there's a lot of things that I needed to learn. So I actually sought out education. And that's one thing about me personally. I'm definitely a lifelong learner. I love to learn. And so that just really kind of fit my personality anyway. But what I did was I sought out mentors. I found a mentor who was hosting a master class, and I just threw myself in there into the community because it's the community of other investors. So I learned from them. I learned from the mentor. So yeah, it's really been good for me, like just enduring, because, and especially since my portfolio continues to grow, I'm still doing this solo at this point, so it is kind of risky. I've been able to sustain and endure, and through like midnight calls, water overflowing the property. I mean, all kinds of stuff, so I'm very proud of that. And not only that, I think that all of these experiences just give me encouragement to keep going. Also to share my story, to hopefully inspire other people, and then help them to get into this industry if that's something that they might be interested in too.
Awesome, awesome. I know you said right now you're kind of solo. Have you looked into, maybe in the future, partnering up with some people or joining on with some other people?
I definitely have. Yeah, I definitely have. I've started a partnership, in fact, with another group of people here in the DMV area, and we're looking to do some things as a group. Also, I'm always interested in partnering, because I think that when you get to a point where you're talking about scaling and doing larger projects or bigger things, you need more people. And real estate is a people business anyway. So I'm saying solo, but not really solo, right? Because I need my realtor, I need my property manager, my contractor. So you always have to have a team. But when you can get like-minded people together in a partnership, I think you'll just go further and you can go there faster.
Awesome, awesome. That is definitely the case. So looking at today's housing market, what's kind of going on with today's housing market from your point of view?
That's a good question. So like one of the things that I've been doing, my most recent project is to fix and flip, right? And it's in Alabama, in fact. And so I acquired this property in November. It took us about 8 weeks to turn it over, to rehab it. And it's been on the market now for about 35 days, maybe 40 days. And real estate is cyclical in a sense of who wants to go buy real estate when there's snow outside? You know, I mean, obviously people have to, you know, if you have to, then you have to, right? But naturally traffic is a little bit slower during those colder times of the year, you know, and then around the holidays especially. So I bought this property in November. You got Thanksgiving, you got Christmas, you know, New Year's, where people aren't necessarily really shopping for real estate. But now I'm starting to see traffic pick up a lot more. It's warmer now, so a lot of more activity happening in the market, which is good.
Awesome. Now I know when you're making these purchases, do you sometimes get nervous making these purchases because, you know, you're thinking like, I know I got to flip it by a certain amount of time. I know 35 days is not that long, but sometimes when it start getting there and you're going 60 days, 90 days, you know, you start getting the time. Do you sometimes get nervous about that?
Absolutely. Yes. I was nervous when I signed the contract. When I the day of the closing, I was nervous, you know? And so I have to have these internal talks with myself, right? And then I also I have advisors. So I'll ask them to look at my deal, get feedback, maybe help me think about some things that I didn't necessarily think about, or is there anything that I might have missed? Because I've been doing this for a while, but I mean, there's still, like I said, always things to learn, things that you can miss. So you always need advisors around you. But at the end of the day, I'm taking on a risk, you know? And so I don't want to go into it not realizing that, you know, it is risky. So you want to make sure that you're stepping carefully, that you're doing proper due diligence, and that the deal actually does make sense. And then you just want to be prepared, you know, like it's important to have reserves because you don't know what's going to happen. Like when you're flipping a property, you think you're going to do kitchens, bathrooms, maybe paint, but you don't know what you might find when you get in there, you know, so you always want to build yourself some contingency. You always want to make sure you have some reserves. So if those things do happen, then you can keep moving.
Awesome. So right now, 2026, it is, we're looking at March, you know, beginning of March, second week of March. Is right now a good time to buy, rent, or should we be waiting?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I mean, here's the thing, like deals happen all the time. In any market, deals are happening. So people are doing deals. You just have to make sure you do that your deal pencils out. Your deal makes sense. As far as if people should be renting or buying, I would say that's more so an individual decision, right? Because everybody's situation is not the same. But to speak in general, I'm always a proponent of owning, whether it's property, whether it's a business, or, you know, ownership to me changes the game, period. So I'm always a proponent of owning. Is it the right time? You know, again, that's an individual decision. But I would say if you can own, do it. The sooner the better. Because although real estate doesn't always appreciate, generally it's going to appreciate. You know, you get the property, in 20 years, you know, it won't be worth what it's worth today. And then your loan will be paid down. You'll have more equity. So all of it plays into how we build wealth, how we change, you know, the fabric of our families. So I'm always a proponent of owning.
Awesome. So we're looking at interest rates. How do they kind of affect everyday families now? You know, I'm not a particular on, you know, what the interest rates are, but some people are saying it might be a little bit high. How are they going to start affecting families?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people might be priced out. It depends, right? Interest rates are higher than what we're accustomed to, right? But they're not highest that they've ever been. Interest rates have been in the double digits before, believe it or not, you know? Granted, at that time, property was a lot less expensive, right? Like, for example, when our parents bought property, they might have paid $40,000 or $50,000 for their house, right? But their interest rate could have easily been 13%. So right now, 6.5, 7, you know, is kind of where we're landing. And so it does sometimes mean that you can't buy as expensive as a house that you would like, because the interest is so high. But you just have to figure out what your range is and shop in that range, make smart decisions about what you can afford. And don't feel pressured to kind of put too much into the price of the house. Just buy what you can afford.
Awesome. So we're looking at some of these first-time buyers. What are they kind of misunderstanding right now? What should a first-time buyer know?
For a first-time buyer, I think they should. I think due diligence is important for a first-time buyer. Like, it's easy to get excited, like this is your first time. I think you should tread very lightly. And when I say that, I just mean make sure you get your house inspected, right? Don't ever buy a property without getting it inspected, because your inspector is going to go in there and see things that the normal eye would not see. And so that's very important to protect yourself and to protect your asset, and yeah, I would say that's probably the main thing. Just make sure you get an inspection, making sure you understand that property top to bottom, as best as you can before you buy that property. Just because sometimes, like I said, we can't get extra excited and just be gung-ho to jump in. But take all the time you need to do that due diligence is what I would say for first timers.
Awesome. So we got inflation going on right now. Some people saying we got oil prices going up. So how would this impact housing decisions? Do you know anything about that?
Well, I mean, inflation has been going on for a while, like high inflations, right? Like we've seen like the Fed, Reserve, and the president kind of fighting back and forth about what the policy should be and how they should change rates now or not change rates, or, kind of pace it. So, or should we do it drastically, just bring them down so that it makes life easier for people? I think one thing that a lot of people don't understand is that inflation happens when there's an influx, right? And so if you think about it, like in the pandemic, there's an influx of money. Everybody had money, whether it was PPP or like different things like that were infusing money into the economy. When everybody has money, prices will go up, right? And so that's what happened. And now that not as much money is in the economy, jobs are being lost, different things like that, then people start to struggle, Housing is a very interesting industry, because the fact is we don't have enough housing in this country. Like, there's not enough houses to house everybody in the country. And then in some cities, like here in DC, it's crazy expensive, to buy property here. So people are often priced out, and that just gets worse with inflation, with war, with the prices of things going up. So I do feel like it's tightening the market even more.
Okay. Awesome. So what should people in communities like ours be kind of watching and waiting for when this housing market, we don't know if it's going to go, how it's going to go in the next 2 or 3 years? What should we be watching and waiting on?
That's a good question. I'm not a proponent of, patience. Yes. Right. Waiting for something to click. No. I mean, I would say, if you're like, for example, if you want to buy a house, right? Don't wait just because this is happening in the world right now, or that's happening in the world right now. Don't let that be your determining factor. Your factors are, how much money do you have, right? How stable is your income? What can you afford? How is your credit? Is your credit good? You got a decent credit rate? Okay, then that's good. If you don't, go fix it. I would say stay focused on your goals, and don't necessarily let your goals be timed by what's happening in the world, or things like that.
Okay. Awesome advice. So I do want to say this. So if someone wants to buy within the next year, what should they be doing right now?
Yeah, two things I would say specifically. If you're, like I was saying about your credit, if your credit's not up to par, make sure you're working on that, right?
Right.
A lot of people don't understand what goes into a credit score, but it's several factors. One of the main things is make sure you always pay things on time. Do not pay things late. Don't let yourself get 30, 60, 90 days late on a credit report, because that hurts you in a major way. And then the other thing about your credit is, if you have debt, keep it at a utilization rate of 9% or less, right? So, for example, you got $100 credit card, do not have a balance of over 9% on that card. That's only $9, right? In this example. But 9% is that key number, 9% or less, okay? And that will help you have a good rating. So that plus your history are the two most important things. So work on your credit. And then you also need down payment money. So if you don't have cash, you got to save cash. Usually, it depends. Like if you're a first-time home buyer, for example, you might want to get an FHA loan. So you're looking at 3.5% down. If you want to get a conventional loan, that's 5% down, And another thing that people can do, like you can initially go to a lender, right? If you have a community bank that you bank with, you might want to talk to your banker or someone in your bank that does lending, or even a major financial institution. And that way, when you speak to them, they can give you an idea. They can look at your income and give you an idea of what would be affordable for you. So I would say probably do that. Make sure your credit's in line. Make sure you have cash that's going to be at least 5 to 7%, of the property that you're going to buy. And then talk to a lender so you have an idea about what's affordable for you. And if you're not, if you're not purchase ready, the other thing that talking to a lender can do is they can specifically point things out to you. Like, well, if you do this right here, then this will help, or they can give you specific advice.
Awesome advice. So I do want to ask you this: what separates a homeowner mentally from a renter? What is the difference in that mentality?
Well, a lot of times that depends on the individual, right? Like, I think that it doesn't. I think that a person's character will determine how they treat a property. Whether it's theirs that they own or is theirs that they rent. Because I have some renters who treat my properties like their own, and I just think that's because that's the people that they are. Yeah. Obviously, when you become an owner, you have a different level of responsibility. I think one thing also, I'll say this too, for your first time home buyers, sometimes people don't realize all the things that actually go into owning property. So now you got to pay your own insurance, right? Yeah. You got to pay your taxes, and you have to maintain your home. That means repairs. That means if something breaks, then you got to fix it, and so that's a little bit of a different mentality, like cutting your grass, for example, right? You don't have to do that as a renter, but when you own the property, now you got to go buy a lawnmower, or you got to have a lawn service, so all of these different expenses sometimes people don't think about when they think about owning a property.
Okay. Awesome. So what is some of the biggest mistakes people are making before buying homes? I know you mentioned before people not getting it inspected. Are there any other mistakes that you can think of that people are making before buying homes? I
think buying more than they should, right? Like buying more home than they should in terms of the price, right? 40% of your income maximum is what you should spend on your mortgage. No more. And that's for everything. That would include your taxes and your insurance and your principal and interest. So you want to make sure, like I was saying before, you buy what you can afford. So, because here's the key thing. When you go to a lender, they're going to tell you the maximum that they can get you qualified for. That doesn't mean that it makes sense, because they tell you, you can buy 500,000, that you should buy 500,000, because what percentage of your income is that really? And then what other responsibilities do you have for your money, right? And so I think one mistake that a lot of people make is, like you said, not getting an inspection, but also buying too much to make the rest of their lives remain comfortable.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. Some people get to a home and they fall in love with it, and they think that they can afford it because, like you say, the loan company has told them that they can, and that is great advice.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to ask you this question also. What kind of families? What can families leverage real estate long term? How can you get your real estate and leverage it long term?
That's an excellent question. So in real estate, you build what's called equity, right?
Mhm.
And so equity is basically saying, okay, I have this home that's worth $500K.
Mhm.
I only owe $150,000 on it, right? So that means that I have $350,000 of equity in that home. If I sold it, perhaps I would take away $335 or whatever. But your equity can be used for other things, right? So for example, you've heard of home equity loans, right?
Yes.
And one thing that a lot of investors do is they recycle their equity, right? So you got a rental, say you've had it for 15 years or however long, you've built $100,000 of equity in there, you can take that equity and go buy another property or several more properties, depending on what market you're buying in and, things like that. So you can leverage a home that has equity to buy more property, to buy other kinds of investments. I mean, you could put that money in the stock market if you wanted to, but you can access that equity, which is basically cash. What you don't want to do necessarily is, take it and buy assets that don't appreciate, like I wouldn't say take that money and go buy a car or something like that. You would take that money and buy something that's going to appreciate in value. So, but that's one way that people can leverage property.
Awesome. Now I hear all the time about these, I guess you want to call them scam people who do refinance loans on people. And when they refinance the loan, the actual loan, I want to say the interest rate is like sky high bogus. How do you be aware of people like that?
Well, you got to read your paperwork and ask lots of questions. I've seen people even get scammed with expensive loans, right? Okay, obviously there are going to be fees, right? When you do a refinance, but it should be reasonable, so you want to make sure you pay attention. I get it. There's a lot of paperwork to sign, I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, but you have to advocate for yourself. And you got to make sure you're paying attention to what you're signing. What is your interest rate? You should know that. If you're refinancing a loan, because it might not even make sense for you. If you got a 3.5% interest rate right now, why would you refinance that into 7.5%? That's going to cost you even more money. So really, you got to pay attention. And I mean, it's good to have people that you trust, but trust is built over time, right? And so I always say, when you're working with new people, you can trust, but verify. If they tell you something, okay, good, fine, great. Go and verify it. Go and make sure you understand. If you don't, ask questions. And if it's somebody who is offended by you asking questions, that's probably not who you need to be working with.
Yeah. Awesome. I really appreciate that. I do want to ask you this. So are there any myths associated with buying property that you could think of? Right now, people are saying a lot of different things about buying property. Are there any myths that you can think of?
Myths.
Yes, myths.
Hmm.
Like falsehoods about buying property. A lot of people say, you know, buying property sometimes is not a good thing, or buying property sometimes? Are there any myths going around that you can think of?
Not really. I mean, I wouldn't say that buying property necessarily makes you wealthy. Obviously, I don't know if that's a myth or anything, right? But I mean, it doesn't, right? But yeah, I mean, I don't really know about any myths around real estate or anything like that. But if you have some, we can certainly talk about them, and you know, but yeah.
Okay. All right. So what opportunities exist right now people might be missing out on? Can you think of any opportunities that's going up right now that people might be missing out on?
Well, not necessarily around real estate, but I would say if you're a stock investor, there's probably opportunity for you to be investing right now. You know, I don't know if you're paying attention to the markets or anything, but a lot of stocks are down, and especially for young people, right? For young people and for anybody really who's investing toward their future. If you wanted to invest in stocks, just continue to buy. You know, I mean, obviously where you're at in your life, right? Your age, when you plan to retire, all of those things will play into what you're going to do in terms of like what makes sense for you with your investments. But if you're fairly young, if you're still working, if you still got a while prior to retirement, when stocks are low, you should be buying them. You should be buying them all the time, you know. But if you have extra money, put it in there. Because again, like real estate, like I was saying, like with sales, it's kind of cyclical. The same thing happens with the stock market. You know, if you look at the history of the market, it goes like that. It will have the ups and downs. You know, that's just the nature of the beast. But is Warren Buffett always says it. He says, when people are scared, that's when you're supposed to be greedy, right? So people are scared now. People are scared. They're seeing the markets go down. What are you going to do? Are you going to be greedy? Or are you going to invest? Because guess what? If you can buy in on the downside, you just benefit even more when it goes up. So there's a thing called dollar cost averaging, right? And so that basically just means, okay, you're going to invest in the stock market. So you're going to put $50 in every time you get paid. Just do it. Just put it in there. Don't even worry about like, once you made your selections and I don't recommend that people buy individual stocks unless they're really, really paying attention to that stock, to that company, right? I think it's more ideal for people to buy like ETFs, like exchange traded funds, things like that, or mutual funds, right? Which is, if you think about it, it's like a car, for example. You can think about it like a car, and a mutual fund or ETF has a bunch of stocks inside of it. So, and then they rebalance it depending on what you buy, right? So if one stock is not doing well, guess what? They're going to put it out of the car and replace it with something else. And so you have other people that are managing your investment for you, right? So yeah, I mean, right now, invest your money, invest it. Don't be scared, you know, like, or even if you are, you know, do some research, right? Reach out, get a financial advisor, or, you know, some kind of money coach or somebody like that that can help you, that can coach you, that you can learn with, so that you can secure yourself for your future, and then that you can secure your family too. So I would say be proactive. Be proactive.
Great. I do want to ask you this question about home ownership. I know you're a home ownership advocate. How can that help strengthen our communities?
Stability. You know, I mean, home ownership creates stability. And when you think about people owning homes in the community, a lot of times you will see more pride, right? You'll see pride of home ownership. You'll see people taking care of their yards, you know, and especially in neighborhoods like where we're from, we don't have HOAs and stuff like that require people to, you know, keep a certain aesthetic to their property. But when you own it, there's a different level of investment, you know, and so I think that shows up in how you treat things sometimes.
Awesome. So what kind of motivates you to keep educating people about housing and home ownership? What motivates you?
Mm, I just like to see people do well. I like to share the things that I've learned. Um, I would say finance, period, is my passion, and specifically personal finance. So, one thing I've done throughout my career is like I mentioned that I started in IT.
Mhm.
After I left the IT industry, I kind of bounced around for a while, but I was a licensed financial advisor for a while. And so I've worked in several different roles kind of around personal finance. My focus has been helping people get student loans forgiven. It's been helping people plan for retirement, helping people get out of debt. I've sat at tables with couples who the wife comes and says, "Oh yeah, I got 13 credit cards." And then the husband's like, "What?" And then turn around, come to him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I've got 20 credit cards," and they have no idea. They have no idea. And so really just like helping people get on the right track, because I personally, Darius, have been through so much with finances. I mean, I did well. I got out in IT. I made a good salary. I just had no idea about how to be responsible with my credit, responsible with my money. And so I learned a lot of lessons the hard way. And so if I can help people not learn lessons the hard way, let my lessons the hard way be their lessons, then I think that would be great. And I would love to do that for anybody who needs help, who's willing to listen, who is starting from wherever you're starting at, because it can be done. So
Awesome. So what would be probably, I know you talk about you learn a lot of lessons, going through different stuff. What would be probably the biggest lesson that you learned while working in this space and learning in this space? What's the biggest lesson you could think of?
I would say bet on yourself, like always bet on you, right? I don't care what the picture looks like. Like, you cannot give up, right? Because a lot of times, I don't know, people have challenges all the time, every day. We all do. We still do, but if you believe in yourself, I think that you can overcome whatever it is that you need to overcome. It doesn't matter where you come from, right? What your parents were like, where you went to school. None of that stuff matters. It doesn't matter. If you bet on yourself and believe in yourself and invest in yourself, then you can accomplish the things that you want to accomplish.
Awesome. That's a great message. So what type of legacy do you want to leave doing this type of work?
Hmm. I want a legacy of I don't know. I want people to learn better, right? I really want to change the trajectory. That's what I'll say. I want people to change the trajectory, right? And it might not necessarily be in my lifetime, your lifetime, And so if a lot of times in families, it takes a pioneer. Somebody got to kick it off, somebody has to be the person who is, call it the rebel if you want to. This person is rebellious because they think differently, or they move differently than what we're used to. And that is good, because guess what? If somebody doesn't do something different, it's going to be what it's always been, right? And so someone has to be that person that has the courage to do what hasn't been done. And when you do that, you can change the life of maybe yourself, but also your children, your grandchildren, and we can all build a legacy. So I want people to know that they can do that. One thing is, I think that a lot of people probably have people like that in their family, in their history or something like that they probably don't even know about, and so that's something that I've kind of been digging into in my own life, is just thinking about my grandparents, my great grandparents. What were some of the things that they did? What were some of the challenges that they probably had to overcome, even though they didn't share it with me? I never even met most of my great grandparents, but they left things, guess what, for their kids. And then their grandkids got access to it, you know? And so if they could do that, why can't we? Why can't we do that? You know? And so I want to be a voice to let everybody know, like, we can change things. We can make things different or better for ourselves, for our kids, and for everybody else that's going to come after them.
Awesome. That is awesome. That is certainly correct. We can definitely do those things. I do want to ask you this question. So if people want to learn more, is there a way that they can connect with you? They need more advice about homes, or they need more advice about financial advice. Where can they connect?
Well, I'm on all social media. Well, not all, because I don't have TikTok, right? But I am on Facebook. It's just my name, Julie Knight. I'm on LinkedIn for anybody who's on the professional network of LinkedIn, and I'm also on Instagram. On Instagram, my handle is jules.gemlife. I can put it in the chat.
Okay, that'd be
so
great.
That people can see it. But you can connect with me on any one of those social media platforms. I'm always happy to meet new people. I'm always happy to make connections, and you know, because you never know what's going to come from making a connection. And one thing that's interesting is that you might have heard people always say, you are only 6 degrees separated from the next person, right? I don't even believe that anymore. I think now it's more like 3 connections, right?
Yeah.
Because the world is like, everything is so global now. And I mean, I was on the call the other day with a developer who, guess what, is buying yellow pine wood from Abbeville.
Wow.
So, I mean, I feel like, you know, we're all connected in one way or another. So please, if you're interested, if I can help, feel free to reach out to me. And I would love to do that.
Awesome. So what would be if you could give advice to maybe someone, young person who just, learning about things like, housing, finance, what would a good piece of advice you would like to give to someone like that?
I would tell them, okay, so like, compared to when I was young, if you look at all of the things that a young person has at their disposal, so many things, you got all these AI platforms now, you got the internet, like so many different resources that are available to you. There is no excuse for you not to learn, the things that you need to learn. Now, granted, they don't teach financial literacy at school like they should. But that doesn't excuse you from learning these things. You got too many resources, And so I would say be proactive again about this, because it's so important, and that's the reason why it doesn't make any sense that they don't teach it, but they don't. So that's just the way of the world. However, the information is still accessible to you, right? And if you don't understand it, because sometimes this stuff can be complex, find a coach, find a mentor, ask somebody in your family, look at who in your family has a life that you would like to live. Ask them what they did, how did they get where they are? So I think it's all about communication. It's about relationships for everybody at any age, but especially for young people. I think that it's important to put yourself around people that you would like to model yourself after, and be proactive about your own learning.
Awesome. You gave some great advice today, and I really appreciate you coming on my show and giving this advice.
I appreciate this so much. Yeah, this was a wonderful talk. I really enjoyed this, Darius. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me today. It's good.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Right.
We got Julie Knight with us today, guys. I really appreciate it. It's the What If Show. Thank you so much, Julie Knight.
Thank you. Take care.
All right.